you the news. Printed the info, we gave you the clues. Owners' profits were always sky high. Changing market now threatens our lives. Post-literation, critical reading, dumbed down.
Hey everyone, welcome to Navel Gazing, the Valley Indy podcast. I am Eugene Driscoll of valleyindy.org. Before I begin, I want to read a message about how you can help your neighbors in the Valley. COVID-19 has changed life as we know it, and the Valley needs your help now more than ever. The region's health and human service providers face unprecedented challenges in meeting the needs of those affected by this pandemic. Some organizations are even at risk of closing their doors. But you can make a difference right here in our community by joining with others in 3 ways. Give directly to Valley nonprofits, participate in the Valley United Way annual campaign, or support the Valley Community COVID-19 Response and Recovery Fund. Visit valleyfoundation.org to learn more. Okay, and now I have not shut off the recording. So my first guest today on this episode is Rick Dunne, the Executive Director of the Naugatuck Valley Council of Governments. Welcome back to the program, Mr. Dunne.
Thank you, Eugene.
And joining Rick is Mr. Jack Walsh, the Chairman of the Derby Water Pollution Control Authority. That is an appointed volunteer position here in the city of Derby. Welcome back, Mr. Walsh.
Always a pleasure to be with you, Eugene.
Thank you, and I apologize. I'm getting some text messages which come in on my computer. We're just going to have to deal with that a little bit. We're low rent, but the information's good here at the Valley Indy. So I thought in this episode of Navel Gazing, we would address comments that have been made recently on the Derby Community Forum Facebook group, not officially connected to Derby government. But first, some background about this subject. Derby residents recently received their bills from the WPCA. My bill was $449, which I could pay in 2 installments, plus a $257 annual capital fee that I'm paying because in 2014, Derby voters approved borrowing up to $31.2 million to make repairs and upgrades to the sewer system. That included replacing aging pumping facilities. That $257 capital fee, and that's for single-family homes, will be paid by Derby folks, I believe, for the next 28 years or so. Could somebody fact-check me? Is that accurate, Jack, roughly?
Approximately. I mean, basically, you'll be billed until it's paid off.
Gotcha. Okay.
We'll have to see what the final cost will be with borrowing and interest rates, et cetera. So we'll see, but probably close to 30 years.
Okay. So there have been comments on Facebook recently saying the city missed some type of grant that could have made paying for this work easier. One person, I'm not using last names here because I don't think the people asked to be dragged into my podcast, but one person was named Jeff, and he said, quote, "I got my sewer assessment today along with the extra pumping station assessment that I'll be paying for the next 20 plus years because the last Democratic administration screwed up and missed the deadline for a grant costing the Derby taxpayer approximately $33 million. There was a comment from Glenn on there. The previous administration did not submit the grants on time, so now here we are stuck paying the full bill. And those comments struck me because I sat in countless discussions about the WPCA referendum under the administrations of both former mayors Staferi and D'Agato, and I really have no memory of this being brought up during those discussions. I do have vague memories in public forums held in 2012 or 13 when it was mentioned that Derby didn't actually qualify for some federal grant money, but my memory is foggy there. But I don't know. Maybe it was swept under the rug. What do I know? So, Rick, in your capacity as a person in the know about such matters, take us back to that run-up to the 2014 vote, if you will. And then later, we'll have Jack talk about the pressure the WPCA has been on under the last couple of years in terms of federal and state environmental regulators and how it's pretty much turned itself around to get in a much more healthy state than, say, 11 years ago. So after all that, and I apologize for taking up the entire broadcast, Rick, did the
I was gonna
city?
say, you said this would be a 10-minute podcast.
Okay.
So no, listen, I appreciate the question. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this. I don't have the luxury of having read the online discussions. I didn't see any of that, but I can tell you, I've served in. I'm afraid to start counting back, but I've served on the tax board. I was on the board of aldermen. I was then the city treasurer for several terms. I was the director of development for the city, and now I run the council of governments for the 19 towns. Who, by the way, we're working on a regionalization study concerning wastewater. But what I can say is to the specific accusation, and I'm sorry, I'm having a little bit of sound trouble, but to the specific accusation of somebody missed a grant application, I mean, it's not true, strictly speaking. I can tell you that this is something that every administration has not paid attention to. And every prior WPCA board has looked the other way. The last time a WPCA board put together a plan and made an application to the state for clean water funds was under the Schlesinger administration, when Joe Moore and Neil Dorso, I believe, were running the WPCA. Or Joe might have been president of the board of aldermen. That was the last time city paid an engineer to put together a plan and submit it to the state until now. And every successive administration, I mean, you can take like our following that, they had just done a project under Schlesinger that probably wasn't an immediate need, but long term, this is an issue of political will. There's no political will from the people on the WPCA board or from elected officials who ultimately govern it to spend what it costs to flush your toilet. And that's really what this is about. So the city's failure to file, the lead time to getting this elusive grant is usually 6 to 10 years. And even if you get the grant, the WPCA or the city still have to issue the debt. And part of that debt is repaid by the state grant. So I think people misunderstand what I'm talking about. The other thing that I think needs to be clarified here is those plans and those grants are for plant improvements and plant operations primarily, which Derby is still facing a whole bunch of improvements necessary there. The bond referendum that was approved was for the pumping stations, which are, I believe, original to the Derby system, and the pipes under the ground, what we refer to as the collection system, as opposed to the plant. So I'm not sure that an application for the collection system would have been very competitive, given the small amount of funds that are available in the state now. And it's certainly, look, no secret, I've had my differences with the Naugatuck administration, but I can't pin it on them. This is going on for 20 years.
So it sounds like what you're saying, and this is what I remember from those public forums held by the city's engineers. I think it was starting under the Stafari administration and continued into Naugatuck. There could have been some clean water, some federal money available for plant upgrades, but the work to get that money would have had to start. If you're going to if it was to help us in 2014, that work would have had to start in 2006 or so to basically get online to qualify for this money. Is that?
That sounds about right. I mean, in terms of the typical time frame from application to approval. Now, Derby's in a little different situation right now in that they have been trying to put together the proposal for the state. The state is actually saying, hold off, wait a little bit, because they want this regionalization study to finish up. I don't know if we have time to talk about that at all today, but
Well, we should. Yeah, because that's important. Because I know one thing that's happening here is, okay, so we have the brand new pump station on 34, a pump station that previously dumped 304,000 gallons of raw sewage in the first 6 months of 2012. It was failing that badly. It was a pump station that was dangerous to go into, according to OSHA. So those improvements have been made, and Jack's going to talk about that. But then at the plant, at the main facility itself, we're sort of stuck in this holding pattern as this regionalization study continues. Maybe Jack, do you want to talk about the regionalization study now?
Sure.
So when is that going to be done, Rick? What's the holdup? Get it done, for God's sakes. Jack Walsh is losing his mind over here.
So Jack is on me on a regular basis about this. And I don't blame him, because the state is still, just holding back from enforcement actions on the city. They're telling the city not to proceed, but still they have the enforcement action hanging over the city's head. I think what's important to understand about a regionalization proposal is we're looking at infrastructure first, and then we're looking at how you organize this. How is it structured? Is it a regional WPCA, if you will? Is it a separate independent entity where towns purchase wastewater treatment? And we're not sure how that works. So we're coming out of phase one, which is the engineering study, which is getting us to preferred alternatives. What's likely, logical, and affordable going forward? I think, speaking for myself, I think we've only eliminated connecting Naugatuck to the system, but you have Beacon Falls, Seymour, Ansonia, and Derby, who are all potential partners in this. Now, it doesn't mean that we're going to have one plant that's going to service all of those towns in a common system. Could be two plants, could be one plant potentially. And then the question is, where do you locate this plant? In order to do this, it's important to note almost every town has to deal with their collection system so that we get enough clean water out of the system. Derby's spending, they're going to be commended. They're spending quite a bit of money on getting the clean water out of the system, because the last thing users want to do is pay to treat clean water. That is the dumbest way, in my opinion, to operate it. And for years, that's been the model. The model is, well, as clean water goes in the system, let it go through, and we'll deal with it. Derby's plant, just for example, I can be corrected on this, but I think, you've got a plant with a capacity of a couple million gallons a day. It runs on average about 900,000, but if it rains 1 inch in 24 hours, you get something like 8 million gallons. So it's that clean water going in the system we have to get out of it in order to efficiently manage and treat the effluent that's properly generated and needs to be treated before it goes back into the river.
Well, Rick, let me just interrupt, because I'm afraid we might lose people at this point, because we're getting so knee deep in.
That's what I do. I do detail.
That's my pun is bad, but all right. But on the other hand, okay, so there's this regionalization study happening. It's very complicated. There's a lot of factors involved. But then you have the main plant, which is, I remember being in there a couple of years ago. It looked like something out of Texas Chainsaw Massacre 4. It was in rough shape, and the equipment looked like it was being held together, with maybe it's improved somewhat. But why doesn't the state let Derby go make the repairs they have to make?
Well,
why wouldn't we waste money doing something? Now that, if there's a regional plan, might be wasted money that we might have to do something else. So that's why we're on hold.
And Rick, is there an end date? Is there any type of date when we'll know which way we're going to go?
Yeah, I think so. We're finishing up the engineering portion of it. It's essentially done. We just have to narrow it down. We're starting. I think we're sending out notices soon to schedule the discussion about a governance model. Basically how rates get set, who controls that, and how it's done, and whether bringing towns together to do this regionally will ultimately save business and residential taxpayers money. because that's really what you want here.
So that's 20 years, we'll know.
Well, you look, rates, it's not just Derby. Derby's facing a huge amount of infrastructure at their plant. They're spending money in the collection system. Ansonia has a relatively new plant, about 10 years old, but their collection system is as old as Derby. I meant as old as the city of Derby. They have the original portion of the city's collection system. Seymour has problems really at both ends that have not been dealt with. To Kurt Miller's credit, he's been aggressive in having us pursue this alternative. I think all towns want to see, before they have to spend more money on their system and before we ask the state to provide more money, what's the most efficient way to get this done and what's the best way to hold costs down long term. And Beacon Falls, for that matter, who I didn't mention, they have a small plant, which is really preventing growth and development in the town. It forces businesses to pay to extend water lines because they have to go on septic. But they have a great collection system because it was built in the 70s. So it's mainly plastic pipe. So everybody's got something at stake here. Everybody has a potential benefit from this. And I think it's going to be late into this year, early into next year, where we'll have a final report on this. But the next step is critical, and it's going to happen in the next 30, 60 days, which is asking the cities to decide, hey, how do you feel about these governance models? And we're going to present several models to them that they can pick and choose between and discuss as a committee.
Okay, so that's moving along. And then, Jack, in terms of everybody in Derby just got their bills, and I guess my, Monday morning quarterback observation is that I think a lot of people are home because of the pandemic. More people are online. More people are involved in Facebook and the community forums. So they're surprised that the bills are so expensive. The total, I think, was about $700 for mine. And I was wondering, Jack, if you could kind of talk about, what does that bill encompass? Why are the rates, or why is the bill as high as it is? And I don't know if that how it compares to other towns, actually. So
that started the discussion. So let me address it. First of all, there was no increase in the bill. Okay, I've seen people comment that the bills were higher. There was no rate increase. There's only been one rate increase in Derby in 8 years, which was last year. Now, the $257, that's not an increase. That was voted in 2014, and it wasn't, attached to the bills until the city started borrowing the money and needed to pay it back. So they will pay that, but that was not a rate increase. That's something the voters themselves authorized to be done. So there's no rate increase this year. If someone has a higher bill, it's because they use more water. Their bill is based on the water usage, a set fee for each facility hooked into the system. So if it went up, it's because their water usage went up in the last year. And then people also asked about, they water their lawns and they fill their pools during the summer, and they don't like getting charged for that because it doesn't go into the system. They don't get charged for that. The bill does not include the summer usage because we recognize that. So there was no increase in the bill this year. Okay. Now let me go back and do a little history here because we're talking about how long this has been going on. Before we started meeting, I was joking that I've seen video of the mayors back in the late 50s or 60s where they were talking about having to build these plants, and they really didn't want to. And you can understand why a mayor didn't want to do it, because they knew they'd have to increase taxes dramatically. They were getting fined $10 a day at the time. It was a lot cheaper to pay the $10 than it was to build one of these plants. I can tell you the fines today won't be $10 a day. And to his credit, John Psaki was the one who kind of pushed to get this referendum to start making these repairs, because the state and the federal government were going to force us to do it anyways. Okay. Now, what's happened since? Well, actually, WPCA has made a lot of progress. You mentioned earlier at the beginning the consent orders. We're in full compliance with all of the orders that the city had to sign. Every one of them. We rebuilt our relationship, and we have a good relationship with DEEP. and the entire state.
And Jack, let me just interrupt for 1 second if people aren't or don't know what a consent order is. Basically, the WPCA was in a lot of hot water for the way it was operating. There were a lot of things being done wrong according to the federal and state regulators. That's essentially what happened. And they gave a set of orders saying you must do this, 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 and this.
Correct. And,
Okay,
a lot of that was tied to the infrastructure itself and how bad a shape it was in. So the city signed the consent orders, and we've been meeting all of those on a regular basis. We've been meeting with DEEP to understand, and also constantly I remind them that the city of Derby is a distressed community, and we can't afford this. 2 or 3 years ago, they wanted us to raise our rates then, and I said, we can't raise our rates because of that. And, we didn't raise our rates then. We did last year. So, it's a difficult situation to be in, but we've made a lot of progress. Rick was talking about the I&I, the water seeping into the system. Derby has over 40 miles of sewer lines. Again, let me repeat that. We have over 40 miles of pipe where water could seep into the system. That's costing us a lot. Separate from the bond issue, we're spending $270,000 each year to remove that excess water from our system. And we'll be doing that probably for another 10 years because some of the pipe is so old. We've actually built 4 pump stations. Okay, one was done with strictly city money before the bond issue. That was a small one at Patty and Terrace. We've replaced the ones at Burtville and the one on South Division Street. And the big one, the $7 million one, was on Roosevelt Drive. So, we are trying to do as much as we can. The staff is doing an excellent job holding things together with bubble gum and paper times, I think. But we need the study to be done to make, our plans. We've submitted, as we were required to, an updated plan for the plant itself. But even though we had to do the plan, it's subject to further interpretation based on what comes out of the regional study. So in essence, we've committed to a plan, not committed to, we gave a plan that may be useless depending on what comes out of the regional study. But that's the way it goes. And I will say to the state's credit, they did fund half of the cost of doing that study. So at this point, we're waiting. And, no one wants to pay more money. Simple as that. I don't care who it is. No one's volunteering to pay more money for taxes or user fees or whatever we want to call them, especially during this period of time. And yet, I think as someone else said, you want to make sure when you go to flush the toilet, it works. Okay, and in Derby, it is working. It's been a problem, but it is working, and we will make it work. Our hope is that this regional study comes up with something that saves us money. I don't know if that's going to happen. I can't tell you that. My own personal feeling, and again, it's my personal feeling, it has nothing to do with anyone else. I'm hoping that based on the regional study, the state or the federal government stepped in and says, well, they're doing the right thing. We should fund some of this. Mm-hmm. Because I can tell you, the city of Derby cannot afford the expenses that we've got coming in 20 years. Okay, forget the referendum. We can't afford it. The referendum will not cover all the costs down the road. No. So if the regional study can give us a solution, all in favor of it.
Yeah, I would just add on that. Well, Jack's on that point. We published the phase 1 evaluations of the current facilities in every town, Naugatuck to Derby. And that report, I'm sure, is on my website. And we announced when it was out there. If people want to really know what every town is facing over the next 20 years, I mean, we're talking, somewhere just shy of $500 million, and that's not addressing the pipes under the ground, collection systems in any aggressive way. It just makes a small allocation toward that. So everybody's facing a lot more cost, and this is not sustainable for the residents of the Valley region or the state of Connecticut. We're not alone in this. So I think that there's some hard decisions to be made. There are going to be some unpopular ones, I think, and there always are with regionalization. But
let me just, Rick, I did get your messages. You guys sound crystal clear to me. I mean, hopefully the recording doesn't have feedback, but just in case it does, let me ask one last question. And hopefully I haven't completely wasted your time, but I think it recorded. We're in a global pandemic. We're facing economic pressure that I'm 46. I've never seen it in my lifetime. There are things happening in the state where they're asking or people are being allowed to sort of delay their rent payments, mortgage payments to some extent. Has there been any talk in terms of the CARES Act or the federal government considering what we're going through? And this also came up on Facebook, where people could maybe not pay this, or could they get help? Could CARES, federal government aid, go to help people in Derby who are struggling to pay their bills? And I know, obviously, with all you've just said, we're staring down the barrel of a gun in terms of all costs going forward. But what about right now? Is there anything that can be done to help people who can't pay this?
I'm not aware of any. There were some pieces of legislation earlier in the year that allowed people to delay the payment of their taxes. Unfortunately, that was not the case with the WPCA bills because of the timing. We could not have done that even if we wanted to do it. So, I mean, there are state regulations of what you can do and what you can't do. So, I don't see anything now. But if the CARES Act wants to put money in there, we'd be more than happy to do it and delay any payments that we could.
So Eugene, the CARES Act obviously is federal. The pending successor to that is the HEROES Act, which has been passed by the House and not yet by the Senate. But the dollars flow in block grants to the state. What you were talking about with what Jack referred to about tax bills, that was an executive order allowing people to delay their payments without penalty, but that was only for tax bills. But the revenue that would potentially come to the state under CARES Act or the HEROES Act, I don't know how it would get to regular people individually, other than the same way it did before, where the federal government made direct payments of up to $1,200 a person and had the extra amount for unemployment. But those are both gone. There is no additional money flowing down the pike for that. The state of Connecticut is certainly not in a financial position to subsidize things like WPCA operations, and that would open a whole Pandora's box anyway about how they do it fairly. So no, I don't know of any way that the current proposals from the federal government could provide relief here.
And Jack, how about in terms of, I know it's very early, but in terms of people paying their bills? I know in Seymour and Derby, I've heard that the tax money is pretty much still coming in. People are still paying their property taxes. Have you gotten any indication whether people are delaying paying their WPCA bill, or does it look okay?
It looks okay. We do track that, and people in the valley pay their bills. Okay, even if they're complaining, they pay their bills because they understand the importance of it. Our collections are pretty much on par where they've been. We're very concerned about that with last year's bill, the second half of the payment. But so far, everything looks to be pretty much normal. So far.
Okay, well, hopefully it stays that way. Well, I want to thank Jack Walsh and Rick Dunn for coming on to this program with little to no notice. I really appreciate it, and I'm happy to have you guys on, so thank you.
Anytime, Eugene.
Thank you, Eugene.
For hundreds of years we've brought you the news. Printed the info, we gave you the clues. Owners' profits were always sky high. Changing market now threatens our lives. Post-literation, critical reading, dumbed down nation, signs of inbreeding. TV sucking ideas from our head. Public discourse just about dead. We'll ride the dinosaur. Yeah, ride the dinosaur. Our readers are in the opens each day. Online clickbait, a prurient way. attrition. We'll ride the dinosaur. We'll ride the dinosaur. Dinosaur. Deadlines, bylines, pictures too. An editorial comment for a buck or two. Fire down the block, the murder next door. And now we wonder what it's all for. Social media coming free to your funny pages. The mayor's wages, criminal seats, corruption schemes, ink state wretches asking tough questions. We'll ride the dinosaur. Yeah, ride the dinosaur. The presses are running all through the night. We're printing the truth with all of our might. We're platform agnostics, got that interweb too. Buy an ad, see what we can do. We still have subscribers, still have our fans. We're here every day, so give us a chance or we'll make an art stand. Just hold us in your hand and we'll ride the dinosaur. Yeah, ride the dinosaur. Dinosaur.